Hello YouTube and welcome back to another edition of 3 Wide. This week the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series is at Chicagoland Speedway for the Overton's 400. In a season where most of the races seem like you've been wasting your time watching with just one guy dominating the whole race, this was a complete change to what we're used to seeing this season. Where we've gone to tracks this season and said, hey, there's multiple lanes, this could produce some great racing, just hasn't come through. This race at Chicago proved that it could happen when the right circumstances arise. Now with this race really showing off the potential that NASCAR could really arise to. Maybe this will put the restrictor plate talk to bed and NASCAR will figure out a way so dirty air isn't really a huge deal as it was here at Chicago and other tracks. NASCAR just needs to look into for their next generation of car to where when someone who's obviously a lot faster pulls up to get behind someone to try to make a pass, it's like they just hit a wall and they're stuck there and can't get by. Luckily at Chicago we had many different lines you could run. If someone took the bottom, you could hop up to the top. The middle lane was working all weekend, and with all those things working for the track and the cars, it turned out to be the best race of the season so far. Also with the new broadcast with NBC taking over this weekend, it was a great change and hopefully will be sustained throughout the season. Now with all that being said, we'll get into my 3 takeaways from the Overton's 400. Number 1, Stewart-Haas's bumpy ride. Throughout the season, the 4 Stewart-Haas cars of Kevin Harvick, Eric Almirola, Clint Bowyer, and Kurt Busch have really been the team to beat. With Harvick having 5 wins on the season, Clint Bowyer getting his 2 wins at Michigan and Martinsville, and Eric Almirola and Kurt Busch looking like they're on the cusp of getting a win, and all 4 of them being solidly locked into the playoffs right now. They all really showed up at Chicagoland. This all started in the beginning of stage 1, where Clint Bowyer took the lead from Ryan Blaney and looked like he was going to be the car to beat all day. But then problems arose as he sped down pit road. And then when he went to take his penalty, he sped again. And then when he had to come in to do a stop and go, he forgot to do the stop and go part. So he had to come back down pit lane, putting him down 2 laps. Oh, but then when you think in the Stewart-Haas camp, there goes their chance of winning today, Eric Almirola takes over and he wins stage 1. But then in stage 2, Eric Almirola scooped up the Stewart-Haas bad luck card and he had a loose wheel. And then when you think, oh, there goes their second chance of getting a win today, who takes over? Kurt Busch and Kevin Harvick. They lead down to the end of stage 2. We're coming out of turn 4. Kevin Harvick gets right down on the side of Kurt Busch, getting that side draft, and goes by Kurt Busch to get the win in stage 2, which set Kurt Busch off saying, that's a teammate right there, which is real weird considering they're actually racing for something. This then sets us up for stage 3, where you think, alright, Stewart-Haas now has a reset point, where Eric Almirola has hopefully all Titan tires. They just had the top 2 cars in the stage, and Clint Bowyer finally gets back on the lead lap. But then it looks like Eric Almirola forgot to hand off the bad luck card as he had another loose wheel. This would really put a damper on his day, where he would go ahead and finish 25th, which is nowhere near where he should have finished off of his performance from today. Then Kurt Busch just completely fell off the map and he ended up finishing 17th. But for the other 2 Stewart-Haas cars, Harvick and Clint Bowyer, who have been the top 2 of the team, they ended up finishing 3rd and 5th. This leaves me and probably all of the Stewart-Haas team wondering what could have been if they all were just having normal days, if we could have maybe had a 1, 2, 3, 4 finish out of the team. Now on to number 2, Larson's magical run. Going into the last stage, it seemed like one of the Stewart-Haas cars could maybe get it done. But then after complaining about his car all day, Kyle Busch took the lead and looked like he was about to run away with it. But then if you look through the field, Kyle Larson was reeling everyone in. He got by Martin Truex at relative ease. He blew by Kevin Harvick like he was standing still, and then got on that top line and just kept reeling Kyle Busch in. But then he hit the wall. But then it looks like Kyle Larson's prayers could have been answered when you looked when Kyle Busch went to lap who else but Ryan Newman, who's a moving chicane on the track when you try to pass him. This led to Kyle Busch getting held up by lap cars with a whole gaggle of them of Kurt Busch, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and Ross Chastain. With all that, and Kyle Larson catching a few lucky breaks, he got to within a quarter of a second of Kyle Busch, and he went for the slide job into turn 1. But he couldn't get all of it as he got into the back of Kyle Busch, slightly putting him in the wall, and then Larson had the lead going into turn 3, which set up Kyle Busch to get a fair shot and run right into the back of Larson, getting him sideways and going past him for the win, and Larson saved it after that. This had the fans in Chicagoland booing Kyle Busch when he took the checkered flag and got out of the car right there. I don't think they were booing Kyle Busch because of the move he made on Larson. I think everyone kind of has a complete understanding, unless you're a Kyle Larson fan, that hey, everything was fair game there. I think they were booing because they just don't like Kyle Busch, which is completely understandable after all the things he's done in his career in NASCAR. And now after all that run from Kyle Larson, this has me wondering when he's finally going to break through and get his first win of the season, as he was many people's, mine included, championship pick. And I think it will be coming really, really soon. Now on to number 3. Comers and goers. Throughout this season, it seems like in most races, with the exceptions of Daytona, Talladega, and Bristol, that you could only really point to 3 or less cars saying they're going to be the guys to win as the race is rolling on. But that changed in Chicago, where you had Ryan Blaney lead at the beginning, maybe thinking, oh, this will be where he breaks through this season. Then Clint Bowyer took over, but then speeding on pit road took him out of it. Then Eric Almirola looked like the guy to beat, but then loose wheels took him out of it. Then Kurt Busch looked like the guy to beat, but then Kevin Harvick went by him thinking he was the guy to beat. But then after a pit stop, Kyle Busch took the lead and he looked like the guy to beat. And then Kyle Larson, working his magical high line, looked like if he just got the right runs, he'd be the guy to beat, but he unfortunately put it in the wall. Then the lap cars got in Kyle Busch's way where you think Larson's gonna catch him again. Then Larson comes out of nowhere, catches him, does an unsuccessful slide job, then Kyle Busch gets him back in the next turn, sending him sliding, and Kyle Busch ends up winning the race. Overall, this is exactly what NASCAR needed, as you felt like if your driver just got the right setup, maybe could take the lead and be the guy to win. But now if NASCAR can just produce half of what we saw at Chicagoland, I think this season can maybe slightly turn around the bad stigma it's really showing on everyone this season. Now what to look ahead to next week at Daytona for the Coke Zero 400. Number 1, what team or manufacturer will dominate? When the NASCAR Cup Series goes to the restrictor plate tracks, we all look to see who's going to be the guys to beat. Would it be the Fords like it's been sometimes in the past? Will Hendrick be the speedsters that they are at the super speedways? Or can Toyota conjure something up to be the guys to beat? And that's what we'll be wondering heading into Daytona this week. Now on to number 2. Will the pack be whack? Every time NASCAR goes through the restrictor plate tracks, this is the one thing that bothers me all the time. When we're all going crazy for the first 2 stages, and then with about 60 or so laps to go in the last stage, mysteriously, everyone gets in a single file line and waits too long to make a move, and the guy who's been leading for the past 60 laps gets the win. Now we'll see this time around if the drivers will make some different changes and make this a different race. Now on to number 3, Almirola's redemption. After being about a half mile away from winning the Daytona 500 in February, where he ended up in the wall from a bump from Austin Dillon, Eric Almirola looks to right the wrong that happened to him in Daytona in February and get the win in July. As we've seen in the past where people have had mistakes in the February race, like David Reagan where he changed his line too early at the Daytona 500 that Trevor Bayne won, he then came back in July and won the 400-mile race. Now Almirola looked to put his second 400-mile Daytona win under his belt. So that'll do it for 3 Wide this week. Leave your thoughts about that race in Chicago in the comment section below, and thanks for watching.